Big 24 hours or so in the Pac-12 conference, John. Can you just give us the latest on how this happened and how we got here today?
Well, look, the Pac-12 obviously has got a war chest that they want to use to rebuild the conference. They started talking to the Mountain West Conference schools about 6 weeks ago, I'm told. That got really serious in the last couple of weeks. But even in the last 72 hours, it progressed faster than people thought it would. And there were staff members at the Pac-12 offices and other people that were involved who said, "Wow, they didn't believe how quickly this came together." So there's a motivating force that's at work out there somewhere. Potentially, the Mountain West maybe was going to make some defensive moves. I don't know, but the Pac-12 came out early this morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and decided that they wanted to make the announcement. Boise State, San Diego State, Fresno State, Colorado State. It makes you a very formidable football conference in 2026. They still have 2 open seats that they're going to need to fill. But, considering what the college football playoff is like, it's the top 5 highest rated conference champions who get in the playoff. And so the Pac-12 now positioned as that number 5 conference that in most years would get an automatic berth.
John, you just kind of mentioned that, but let's talk about the significance of today, what this announcement means for Oregon State and Washington State and the future of the Pac-12 conference as a whole.
Yeah, I think, they've been in an existential crisis since, that 2 August ago where they got left behind. And somebody compared it to like the John Wick movies where you're watching Oregon State and Washington State fight back against everything that was wrong against them. But the truth is, this is just business, and they're now leaving the Mountain West Conference in much the same position that they got left in, and there's really a trickle-down effect to this. But for Oregon State and Washington State, I think the fan bases are energized by this. I think it's interesting that they make the announcement right in the lead up to the Civil War and the Apple Cup football games. There might be some strategy there. Maybe Washington State was trying to sell some tickets for that neutral site game. But certainly I expect a lot of enthusiasm and that hopelessness that I think those fan bases felt over the last year or so, I think has been replaced by curiosity, at least. There is some skepticism out there about what they're trying to do, but I think it's a really nice step in the right direction for these 2 schools.
What have you thought about the way that Oregon State and Washington State have handled all of this? Because it felt like the Pac-12 was dying, and now they've essentially brought it back to life.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think they learned some things from the last round and the mistakes that they made. What did they do, as they got picked over by other schools? They waited too long. They believed too many people. There was a breakdown of trust inside the room. I think it was really interesting how tightly knit they kept this. Granted, there's only 2 schools involved, but there were no leaks. The Mountain West Conference, I talked with Gloria Navarez, the commissioner of the Mountain West, in person on Saturday. I was at the Oregon State-San Diego State game. She was in town. I met with her. She knew that they were in touch with her schools, but I do not think that the Mountain West thought they're coming for my schools this week. I think, they were thinking, they had months to make a decision on this and maybe play some defense. But I think they've handled it well. It's a business. We've learned that in the last year, and they're trying to position themselves and create value. And I also think, look, there's significant penalties for these schools that are leaving the Mountain West, $17 million per school. I'm told that the Pac-12 is going to pick up part of that or maybe help the schools with part of it. There's also the potential of $43 million in poaching penalties that the Pac-12 would have to pay the Mountain West. There may be a challenge on that, but that's where they stand today. And, I don't think you pay that kind of money unless that you've got something to run to. So I'm really curious to see, do they have a media rights deal coming down the pipeline? Have they talked to networks? I would be really surprised if those 4 schools would just jump for the sake of jumping.
And you touched on it there, just the dollars and cents. The Pac-12 had, 65 million bucks in hand already? Or what was kind of the dollar figure there in terms of what they were working with in order to make something like this a reality?
Yeah, the Pac-12 won all of the assets, and now it makes sense. Like, they fought so hard to get all of the assets in that Whitman County courthouse in Washington. a little more than a year ago, right? And so you look back at that and you think, gosh, what a victory that was for the Pac-12, and it makes sense why they fought so diligently for that money. It was a $255 million package that they won, but now, they have operating expenses. They don't have media rights money like they used to. So they're living off part of that. But Teresa Gold, the Pac-12 commissioner, told me on her first day on the job, she said she had set aside $65 million for the potential of a rebuild. Now, the Mountain West Conference commissioner, Gloria Nevarez, when I told her that, she said 65 million. She goes, that's 6 of my schools. I find it interesting that they only took 4 and they've left 2 seats open. So there's a lot of speculation about what they might do with those 2 seats.
John, what was it about these 4 schools in particular that were so attractive to Washington State and Oregon State to want to do this?
Well, there's 2 ways to make revenue in college athletics. Football is one, and then men's basketball is the other. When you look at these 4 schools, they not only have Boise State's got the football brand. San Diego State's got a nice stadium. Fresno State has some media rights value in the Central Valley of California, and Colorado State can help bring Denver into the fold from a media rights standpoint. But from a football perspective, they have all played decent or better football, and in some cases, people are looking at Boise State thinking they might be a college football playoff team this year. Additionally, they have geography. The geography of this fits sort of what the Pac-12 bellyached about when Stanford and Cal went to the ACC, and Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA left. The Pac-12 said, oh, you're going to hate the travel. This is unfair to the athletes. This is a true return to more of a geographic conference. And so, for that reason, I think it's interesting. I kept hearing the word like-minded come up as I talked to sources. Washington State's president, Kirk Schultz, told me, they're like-minded. We're like-minded with them. But I think that's a big way of saying, look, we have a lot in common with them. They're all state schools. The geography works. They're, from a football standpoint, in 2026, this conference will be well positioned to play a conference schedule that will be, as good as maybe the Big 12 can offer, a Big 12 school. So I think you'll look at the schedules and think, gosh, they're playing some decent teams. And then from a basketball standpoint, San Diego State was, not that long ago in a national championship game, and Boise State is a very good men's basketball program. So there's a lot to offer there. It comes back to, though, those 2 empty seats. Why did they hold on to 2 seats? It's curious to me. Could they be looking and hoping, keeping a seat warm for Stanford and Cal should something happen in the ACC? I was told that they looked at UNLV, but UNLV has got a board of regents in the state of Nevada that ties it to Nevada. So you would have had to take both schools. I think right now that they'll do a little bit of sitting and waiting, but I don't expect this to be months and months and months. I think they know they need to mobilize. They know they need to kind of put this conference back together, and they took a big first step with this.
Just a couple more, John. Do you like this move? Is this the right move for the Pac-12? Do you think they should have waited? Do you like the schools that they got? Just overall, your opinion on how this all went down, and essentially, was this the right move?
You look at 108 years of tradition that got blown up. I mean, this conference does not look like it looked before. There's no, UCLA, no USC, Oregon and Washington are gone. You're not bringing them back in this move. You're replacing the divots with, decent schools. And so I understand, like, some of the national people that are out there that are kind of waving it off as, oh, it's the glorified Mountain West. I think it really matters what they do next, like what they do with the next, 2 seats, and what kind of media rights deal, will they position themselves for? I like it because I think it's a good step in the right direction. It sells hope to people in the conference. It makes you better from a football standpoint. It gets you in your conference champions in the CFP, in most years, if not all years. And Bob Thompson, the former Fox Sports Network president, told me this morning, he said, look, they're gonna go to market with a media rights package, and he goes, the only thing better than being at the front of the line in that kind of negotiation is being the only one in line, and they will be the only one in line with some suitors out there like ESPN and TNT and the CW and a whole bunch of others. So it'll be interesting to see what they get in media rights valuation. But I have to think that Boise State, San Diego State, Fresno State, and Colorado State didn't just leave the Mountain West on, a handshake and a flimsy promise. They must know something the rest of us do not.
I like that you used the word chaos, or you used quoted the word chaos in all of this. And how was chaos beneficial for Oregon State and Washington State? Because it just seemed like they were down so bad, and that this was all impacting them. But it seems like they may have used this to their benefit.
I'll use a football metaphor. I mean, they were some programs in need of a turnover, right? They were down a few scores in this game, and they needed some chaos. They needed to ugly this game up a little bit. And Scott Barnes, the Oregon State athletic director, he said it out loud. I mean, for weeks he said, chaos is our friend. And so, they create a little chaos with this move. But there's another move here. I am being told there are two bites to the apple, that this is just the first bite. And I think it's a good bite. But, would chaos in the ACC potentially benefit them? Is the ACC looking at creating an Atlantic and a Pacific division? Is this part of it? We don't know some of that yet. And I'm going to be all over it. But I'm really looking at Stanford and Cal, who wouldn't have been caught dead in a conference with Boise State or Fresno State. Has their mindset shifted? Is the idea that everything's headed to a super conference make it palatable for them to get back to a regional conference? Would the ACC let them out, or do they need to have Clemson and Florida State blow up the conference and have total chaos to have something happen? The football games are going to be played on Saturday, but in the background, I think there is a big time game going on.
Nicely done, John. Thanks for dropping so much knowledge here. I appreciate you.
Thank you, my friend.